What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 141. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine or X, whatever you call it nowadays, at Armando underscore Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, the content, this episode, please make sure you follow, rate, review, like the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. Today, we're going to be diving into the AFC West, recapping the 2025 season from every angle, really. We'll talk about how each team performed, the storylines heading into the offseason. We're also going to be breaking down how each team stands right now, look at some of the coaching changes and how that's going to impact those teams, and look at free agency priorities and roster needs for each and every team. And with me to do it today is the one and only Tyler Buecher. How's it going, brother?
Doing good here, Armando. Excited to chat some football. We've got some good news coming out of the NFL Combine where, yeah, we get the information in terms of some speed numbers, some height and weight. But what I always find most interesting is the chatter around the general managers and the press conferences we get. So we'll dive into some of those news and notes that we got from that past weekend here as we start looking at the AFC West.
Yeah, man. It's it was a division that when you look at the teams, Denver was a huge surprise. They won their division. They went 14-3. Just an exceptional year there. The Chargers were second with an 11-6 record there. The Chiefs, it was a disappointing season in addition to, obviously they were playing really well before they lost Mahomes, but obviously losing Mahomes with that ACL tear, that was a big loss. They went 6-11. It was a losing season for the Chiefs, something we haven't seen in many years. And then the Raiders, 3-14. I mean, talk about one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I think right from the beginning, right? I think they won their first game, if I'm not mistaken, I think at New England. And then it was just downhill from there. But you and I are going to be talking about each and every one of these teams, go team by team and all that stuff. But before we dive into the team by team stuff, overall thoughts on the AFC West, the 2025 season. Were you as surprised as most people were as far as Denver's results there and how quickly they made a big turnaround there? And then Chargers, I think it was a pretty impressive season, though they fell short at the end. But overall, I think pretty good season there. Overall thoughts on this division, man?
Yeah, I put a few long shot NFL futures in to begin the year, and Denver was one of my teams I grabbed at 40 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. They fell a little bit short. Unfortunately, injuries caught them at the very tail end prior to the AFC Championship game, but I would have been sweating some fun tickets there. But Denver, I thought they did a great job. I mean, the defense sound across the board, the offensive line sound across the board. We really just need to see what kind of step forward we would get in year two from Bo Nix. It was almost a rinse and repeat in terms of what he did. So I thought that was kind of I want to say a lukewarm progression. We didn't see much in terms of like a big step forward. It kind of felt like just a small semi-step. As far as the Chiefs falling from grace, yeah, that was a big one. But when you look back at this team and how it's structured, they've been getting so lucky with playing close to the vest in terms of like one possession, or I'm sorry, one score games where they had so much luck in their favor these past few seasons. It kind of seemed to like finally go against them. Injuries started surmounting the defense. They just have a lot of things they got to approach there. Then the run game is basically non-existent. So you throw in that, the problems they had, the offensive tackle, it wasn't a big surprise to see them kind of fall off. Um, I was not expecting a six-win campaign, though. I think that was a very, very big shock. The Chargers, another good team in transition. We'll see what happens in 2025, 2026 with them parting ways with Jesse Minter. Excited to see what we've got there with Mike McDaniel now coaching that offense. I think we can see a lot of fun there with the LAC. They're one of my favorites to win the Super Bowl in 2026 right now as it stands in March. And what else? I mean, the Raiders, a one and done coaching staff. We saw Ashton Genty kind of held back by that offensive line. Really hoping Clint Kubiak's able to get the most out of that unit, and hopefully with the amount of cap space they have. A lot of these teams here in the AFC West are loaded with cap, so it'll be a very, very interesting one to see who's able to like turn around and make some big moves here this offseason, which makes talking about them an exciting unit. Like the AFC West is, that's for years, it's been a challenging group. And I think with Denver taking a step forward, with the Raiders retooling, the Chargers making a run, like I think once again, it's going to be a challenging division entering 2026.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Especially for the Chargers. I think I'm gonna have some future bets there for sure. I'm pretty excited about that Mike McDaniel hire. Like, look, as a head coach, he did not do great, but I'll tell you this, like the offensive mind and the play calling that he does in my opinion is very, very good. And I think not having the pressure of coaching the team and just focusing on the offense, I think that's going to be have a significant impact here for the Chargers in a positive way. So I'm pretty excited because they have some pretty good tools here, some really good weapons on offense. I think they're going to add to that as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see them add, some pieces there. But I think they're in for a good season. I mean, look, the Raiders have the number one pick. They're getting the best quarterback in the draft class here. I think that that's they're going to be someone that's trying to turn around. They do think they have a lot of holes. Interested to see what happens there in the Chiefs is this season too. They obviously they have some work to do. I think we're going to talk about some of their holes or whatnot. And then Denver. I mean, a team that I agree with you 100%. Bo Nix kind of just stayed like idle, from one year to the next. I just think he took a little bit more control, right? Like I think he felt a little bit more comfortable and became more of a leader of that offense. But this is a team that strives off defense, man, right? And I think that we're going to see that continue here. This is a Denver team. I'm excited to see what they do because I think if they add a couple key pieces to the offense, I think they could be a very dynamic unit, man. So I'm pretty pumped to see what they do this offseason, both in the free agency and in the draft. So we'll kick it right off with them, dude. We'll go alphabetical order here. So Denver, we'll talk about them. And then as far as like, when you look at coaching changes or whatnot, um, I guess the biggest thing is Davis Webb is going to be their offensive coordinator. He's going to be calling plays. That's big, right? That's huge. That's going to be a change. That's something, Peyton was the one calling plays last year. We're going to see that, change this year. What are your thoughts on that, first of all? Because I think that's a big change, and I think that's important here. What do you thoughts about him, Webb, play calling here for Denver in 2026?
I think it's huge. I mean, Sean Payton has always held that as responsibility. So to see him kind of like ease off the gas pedal and let others take over, maybe we're trying to see him improve his coaching tree, which has some hits, some misses. It's not really a pronounced tree when you look around the league at other trees and compare them one for one. But I do find it interesting that he's letting Webb, a young guy, go in there. He replaces Joe Lombardi, who was fired. They also brought in John Morton from the Detroit Lions. He'll be their pass game coordinator. So for those that forget, he was the play caller that was operating Detroit in the 2025 season. Then we saw Dan Campbell take those responsibilities over to close out the year. So we've got a failed guy in Morton coming over. We've got Webb, a first timer. So I'm interested to see how this plays out because I think it'll be exciting. Hopefully we get fewer shenanigans in terms of personnel. Like I'm just done with the constant rotation of players that we see from Sean year in and year out. So maybe with Davis Webb pushes back on that a little bit, provides some resistance, saying, "All right, this is my offense. This is how I want to run it. I don't want to throw in this fifth, sixth string wide receiver at the goal line just because that's what you like to do." So yeah, I'm kind of eager to see how this plays out. Knicks again, like he didn't really improve too much. So maybe we can get a little bit more out of Webb. Like uh, maybe Webb could get more out of Knicks, is what I'm trying to say. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on this promotion?
I'm excited. It's all like you said. It's a lot of young coaches here, so I'm excited to see what happens. How they transition this offense. I agree. I think this can maybe create a little bit more consistency out of both. The tight end usage and the backfield usage. Like I just want more consistency there. Even at times, we saw Troy Franklin like take off as the wide receiver one, and Cortez kind of take a back seat. Over the course of the season, it was Sutton that obviously led the team in target share with 21%. But the point is that we saw like some inconsistency from this offense, and there would be weeks and multiple weeks where they focused on one guy, and multiple weeks they focused on another. I would like a little bit more consistency, especially from a fantasy standpoint. But yeah, I am excited to see what happens here. You look at some of the free agents here, and I guess Dobbins is the big name. J.K. Dobbins, he was an unrestricted free agency going into this season. You also have obviously some key defenders. Alex Singleton, I think that's a huge one there, the linebacker. Um, any free agent here that you think would be an impactful loss, and you think they're going to pursue the retain here, Tyler?
Yeah, it's not just Dobbins they're losing in the backfield. They're also going to lose Tyler Bidet, Jaleel McLaughlin,
Yeah.
their fullback Michael Burton. Like, there's a lot of backs that are up for grabs in terms of expiring contracts. The good news for us in terms of this rotation talk we were just talking, wide receiver Lil Jordan Humphrey is a free agent. Hopefully he's elsewhere. Adam Troutman elsewhere. 41 or 42-year-old Mercedes Lewis, also a free agent. So
Yes.
offensively, we'll see some of these like depth pieces kind of on the move. Very interested to see how they retooled it. I thought I saw how do I want to phrase this? RJ Harvey to me, I thought looked like a competent back in terms of like more or less a strong 1B as a pass catching guy. But I still think this team desperately needs like a between the tackles kind of guy that what Dobbins basically offered. So if I imagine they'll try to make a run at Dobbins, not sure if they'll bring him back or not. But Dobbins, I mean, he was clearly the 1A when healthy prior to that late season injury. Um, but yeah, I don't think Dobbins has. I'm sorry, I don't think Harvey has this gig locked up by himself. Like I think if they are to let Dobbins go test free agency and um, maybe them test the market themselves, they've got $27.9 million in cap space. It's the 13th most in the league right now. Maybe they go after one of these big names like Travis Etienne. Like that'd be kind of fun just to get a pair of explosive backs there. My big question though is what happens with Dobbins? Because I think he could be a guy that after this past year could find a lot of suitors very interested in his services.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. Like, right, what is his market really going to be? And I think that's going to be the determining factor for the Denver Broncos, whether they want to retain him or not. Because I do think he's a good complement to Harvey. I think you're 100% right. Like, Dobbins is going to be that in between the tackle, that guy that gets, the dirty stuff done. And then RJ Harvey, the explosive running back. I think he will get, obviously, look, he had 146 rush attempts last year, 3.7 yards per carry. Not great, right? But those 47 receptions, that to me stands out. 356 receiving yards, five receiving touchdowns. Really, really impressive there. I think he could do much better, obviously, running the football there. But someone that is going to have a role in the passing game this year. It will be interesting to see. Like if he goes into the season as the RB1, right? Like let's say they don't add anyone that's a major threat to him. Where do you see him going in fantasy drafts? Like, where do you see him? Like, where do you think his fantasy stock becomes there, Tyler? Like, is he an RB, a top 15 running back, top 12 running back, or is he still in that RB2 category for you?
I'd be pretty bearish, I'll be honest. Like in a lot of advanced stats, he was not that great. So there were 49 running backs with 100 plus carries last year. Harvey was RB 47 out of 49 in rush yards over expectation per attempt. He was RB 42 in explosive run rate, RB 21 in missed tackles forced per attempt. So he shined there. But RB 44 in yards after contact. So he's one of those backs that made the missed tackle, but just wasn't capitalizing on yardage afterwards. He had the fourth highest stuffed rate. Like the past game was spot on. Like he was fantastic in that element. But when I look back at his rookie profile in terms of things we were looking at him coming into the league, he was known for explosive plays. So just to see them kind of like not show up in year one, I'm kind of bearish on maybe it was just him still getting used to the NFL. But like this was a great and fantastic offensive line in terms of run blocking. They were top 10 in yards before contact per attempt. We just didn't really see Harvey capitalize on the ground that much. So if he's going to be that lead back, I'm a little bit more skittish because we hadn't really seen it in year one in terms of him being a productive back on a down to down basis. So I'd be more inclined to put him in back end RB2 territory, maybe in the RB 20-ish kind of landing spot.
Yeah, and I think what the problem I think is going to be here is like if he is that guy, his price is going to significantly increase, right? Like I think a lot of people are going to be jumping in that bandwagon because the usage, and he's an explosive running back. And you're right, they were the seventh high. They had the seventh highest PFF grade in run block last season. Really good run block team, the Denver Broncos. So I don't. It was very difficult to see him average under 4 yards per carry often when he had the workload. Like a lot of his big games he averaged under 4 yards carry. It was just a touchdown based games, like he had several
Hmm.
games with multiple touchdowns. So that is something to take note of. But I do think that there's more. Like I think he's better than what he flashed as a rookie. I agree with you. I think that there's more explosive runs in him. But I want to see them first, right, before I invest highly there. When you look at the receiving group here. Obviously, Cortland Sutton, their guy. Troy Franklin, I was very impressed with what we saw last year. At times, he flashed what he's capable of doing. Um, do you think it's a position of need for them going into this upcoming season?
No, I don't. I think we've still got kind of Sutton as that 1A, and then it's a pretty decent teardrop to Franklin, Marvin Mims, Pat Bryant. But that trio there, the Franklin, Mims, Bryant, I think that provides enough depth where I don't think it's a massive necessity for them to go out and spend capital or elite, elite draft capital or cap space money to go acquire somebody of need. I do think it does keep them kind of um, flat in terms of like any kind of growth from Bo Nix because I just don't see Sutton as like a winner. I don't know why in my brain he's just kind of like a just a slow rebounder that doesn't have much explosiveness. He had just 8 catches of 20 plus air yards last year. He was wide receiver 18 in yak per reception among all wide receivers that cleared 1,000 yards. That was 18th of 19 wide receivers. So like he's not the guy that's going to make a lot of yardage and like a slant and then just take it to the house. Um, so I think it kind of means we're seeing Nick's hitch his wagon to Sutton as his like big wide receiver with the sporadic deep shots to Franklin Mims. Um, and then when you throw in the fact that Evan Ingram did next to nothing, he just basically stole $16.5 million guaranteed from the Broncos last year. I know one of their big needs is tight end, but um, I don't know, man. I just don't see this unit elevating the play of Knicks. I think Knicks is the point guard player that's kind of putting these guys on the map relative to the other way around. So I do think eventually they're going to need to add somebody. I just don't know with the way the contracts are set up and the way their money is set up. They just gave Sutton a 4-year, $92 million extension last offseason. Like there's just a lot of money tied up and a lot of capital tied up in these positions that we just kind of need to wait and see if they develop.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would like one piece added here. I think they do need to address the tight end position. I think that is a position of need. Like, and I you can go through the draft class. There's some, we talked
Hmm.
about it in the last episode. Where likely is one of those, free agents that maybe ends up here. I think that would be great. So there's a couple guys out there. Otten's another guy named to watch that would be a good addition here in Denver. Um, they can also address in the draft, like I mentioned. So I do think that that is a position of need. I think that if they do get themselves a good tight end here, I think it would elevate. Do you think there's a chance that Troy Franklin takes a step ahead of Sutton in 2026? Like, do you think there's a path for that?
Let me just look up something real quick. I just want to see how much this dude weighs because I think it's like 170 if I'm not mistaken. Because I don't put any faith in wide receivers that are this thin. Yeah, 180 pounds. Yeah. Okay, so like over the last like 20 years, there have been like very few wide receivers that are put up capable of putting up 1,000 yard receivers, 1,000 yard seasons that are 180 pounds or less. We saw Darnell Mooney do it recently. Devonta Smith has done it a few times, but the number of people that are able to do it multiple times is very, very few, and it's a smaller list. So I'm kind of bearish on any receiver that thin to become a number one in an offense. Um, so no, I'm personally not very bullish on that.
Yeah, I think it would have happened last year, right? I think there was an opportunity for it to happen last year and it didn't. I am interested to see what happens with Franklin though in 2026, entering his third season. Like usually there's the receivers take a leap there. But again, I think it could have happened last season and it didn't. Sutton is their guy, like you mentioned. Anything else here in Denver that we haven't discussed? Anything, any changes, anything you're looking for in 2026 for them to, to add, do before we jump to the next team?
Um, no, I would just say that I think tight end's a very big need for them in terms of getting somebody because, like I said, Troutman, Mercedes Lewis, both these guys are free agents. Evan Ingram, uh, not a very impactful signing last year, and he's 32. He incurs a $14 million cap hit. I've seen a few mocks where they've got Oregon's Kenyon Sadiq here drafted. So if he lasts all the way to the end of the round one, again Sadiq is he after tearing blowing away the NFL Combine with his 40 speed, I imagine he'll have some mocks are going to gravitate towards him a little bit higher than 30th overall, but I do think there's a good chance that Denver takes him if he's there. Other than that, I would say that this team needs to get some youth at offensive tackle. Their left tackle, Garrett Bowles, is 32. The right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. I'm sorry, Garrett Bowles is 34. Mike McGlinchey is 32. They're getting up there. They both have massive cap hits. So just getting some successors for down the line, I think, would be a wise move.
And I think you can never go wrong with too many offensive line, right? Like offensive
Yeah.
line depth, you can never go wrong with it. This is a young team too, right? You have a young quarterback, pretty young supporting cast as well. Like you continue to build that strength. It's a strength already. Continue to build on that strength. I agree with you. I think that's the way I would approach this draft as well if I am them, and free agency as well. Attack the tight ends, offensive line, continue to beef that up. And this team is very well built right now, and I think they're in for I think they're going to continue to compete at a high level here moving forward.
Mhm.
So long as Bo Nix is able to take steps forward, right? Like he stayed idle this year and it worked. If he stays idle again, we don't know if that's going to work, right? Like I think he's going to have to take a little bit of a step forward here in 2026. But definitely a team that's I think it's going to be competing at a high level here in this division and in the AFC in general. Um, the very next team here, Kansas City. Look, it was obviously a disappointing season. They've added a new offense coordinator. All right. We have a couple of free agents that we have to keep in mind here. Travis Kelce's a free agent. Marquise Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. You got Pacheco entering free agency. Jalen Watson on the defensive side. Several guys. I think Tyquan Thornton's another interesting name that's heading to free agency there. But talk to me about the Chiefs. The changing in offensive coordinator. Some of these free agents. The season obviously was not what we expected. We kind of recapped it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but um, are you worried about the Chiefs going into 2026?
Yeah, I think you should be for a little bit. So they've got offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy
Yes.
returning. Like he's been around the block. So like we saw him go to Washington, kind of fizzled out there as OC, but now he's back in Kansas City. It took some time away. Um, what I'm interested in this offense, I think it kind of starts with the offensive line. Like we saw some quotes from Brett Veach over this past weekend where he really praised the interior unit. And then today, we got a quote from him saying that they wanted to release Jawan Taylor, the right tackle, who, I mean, good job. Like this has been a need because he's been uh, top three among all offensive tackles in penalties for 3 straight years. This dude is the false start king. He somehow gets away with his little quick movements before the snap time and time again. They can't call it every single play. I'm just waiting for a ref to just do it time and time again. Nobody's ever manned up and done it. Last year, he was the number 76 graded overall tackle among 84 qualifying by PFF. Not great. So moving on from him was wise. Left tackle um, Simmons they got last year in round one. He had some off-field stuff that kind of made him some game day inactives. Very interesting. Where we don't really have a ton of details about it, but it was basically just I'm not sure it was mental or something like in that capacity, but it kept him off the field multiple times. So they got to figure out what's going on with that. But yeah, offensive tackle to me is probably their biggest need because keeping their multi-million dollar Patrick Mahomes guy upright is huge. Um, and then he's coming off a torn ACL. Like there could be a new quarterback starting for the Chiefs the opening month of the season. That wouldn't shock at all. So very interested to see what they do in terms of possibly looking in the free agent market. Maybe they get one of these young, exciting guys like Trey Lance or Anthony Richardson or Zach Wilson, one of these younger guys that had the capital but just really didn't really pan out in their first contracts. Gardner Minshew is a free agent, so he may be on the move out of Kansas City. Um, yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing to start, the offensive tackle in the passing game, because this offense just is kind of all centered around that. Mahomes is the star here in KC.
And we've seen it, right? Where when the offensive line is struggling here in Kansas City, like it's a struggle for Mahomes. We saw it. Like this is why they lost against the Bucks in the Super Bowl. Like that offensive line was not good. It was a ferocious
Mhm.
defensive line. Like we saw him pressured consistently. You want to protect your quarterback, like you mentioned. I definitely think that's a point of need. I like Bieniemy being back here. I think they're trying to bring this Kansas City Chiefs offense back to life, like what we've seen. But I think a key point here is a backfield, right? When you become one-dimensional in the NFL, it's very tough to produce. And I think that we've seen that. Like they were dealing Kareem Hunt. I mean, okay, fine, he was okay, but he's not someone that is threatening. And Pacheco, ever since his injury, was just not the same running back. Like since he returned from that injury that he suffered a couple of years ago, was not the same running back. I think it's a major point of need here for this team. I agree. I think you're going to see a different quarterback here under center for the Chiefs to start the season. It'd be interesting to see who they bring. You mentioned obviously some young quarterbacks there. I think there's several guys that they could bring in, and it really depends on where Mahomes is going to be right at the start of the season and where they project him when they project him back. And where the team is when they're expecting him back. So, um, I see some changes here, of course. I think the offensive line is huge. We have to continue to build here. For me, man, this is a team that, so long as you have Mahomes and Andy Reid, though, you're going to compete, right? I think they're going to compete. I know that they were not playing well last year, but so long as you have these two, they're going to compete. Tyler, when you look at the backfield here, do you see? Obviously, we're going to see a new player. Do you see any of these free agents being a major? Because the thing is, the cap. This is probably the team with the least cap. If I'm not mistaken, they have the least cap space in this division. I have to double check it, but I believe they have the least cap space in this division. I think that's an issue for them. So like I don't know if they can make a big splash in free agency at the running back position. Do you think that they're going to be able to address it at the running, like in free agency, or is this something they're going to have to do in the draft?
They've got the number 9 overall pick, and Jeremiah Love. We've seen that mocked pretty often. Notre Dame over to Kansas City here. I'm very curious to see if that plays out because that would be like a fit and glove solution here, where you don't need to pay the rookie a ton of money, and you're able to get a star basically. We've been waiting for this basically since the Clyde Edwards-Helaire swing and a miss. Looking back on that draft when they could have had Jonathan Taylor, you just always look back and think, what if? But yeah, this team definitely needs some running back help. The only guy they've got right now is Rashard Smith, a guy that we liked as a pass catching back, but I do not think he's set for being a between the tackles runner. And you nailed it with the guys that they currently had. Pacheco, Hunt, they're just washed at this point. It is what it is. They were 31st in yards after contact per attempt, 31st in explosive run rate. They just didn't have anything they could lean on. So they've also been linked to Travis Etienne as a favorite, but that's going to be a costly move. Not sure if that's really in their budget. Um, yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of them going with like a Tyler Algier. I thought that would be a fun fit, putting him and Love together, and then letting Rashard Smith doing his change of pace options. Um, that's I don't that's where I am. I think that'd be where I would like to see this team go, but I don't know. Maybe we'll get a player even lesser of Algier's caliber, just because they're at minus 6 million, right? Minus 6.3 million right now as we stand here.
Yeah, they have cap issues, and that's the thing. Like they're going to struggle to make, I think, big splash. Speaking of Tyler Algier, I think that's another good fit for Denver that we didn't discuss, but I think he would be a good fit in Denver there,
Yeah.
as well. He'd be a good compliment, a young and good compliment to Harvey there. So going back to the Chiefs here, like I definitely think they're going to have to address this. I agree with you. There's been a lot of links to love. I think that that's ultimately where, how it shapes out, given the team needs here. But when you look at this receiving group, are you confident in it, or is this another, situation where you're looking at it's like there's going to be some, some needs here. So because they're losing Brown, and I get it. Look, Brown is not significant. I understand these things. Like these are not like most impactful guys, but there's still depth. You're losing Brown, Smith-Schuster, Thornton. Um, I, I think this is a position of need for this unit as well. Do you agree?
Yep, it's one of my top 3 needs for them. I think this is a huge need for them because we've got Rice possibly facing another suspension this offseason. So after missing the first 6 games last year, he's definitely, or I'm sorry, he's on the path for another possible legal transgression, um, which is crazy. I mean, this dude last year was fantastic when on the field. Posted career highs in receptions per game, 6.6, 9.8 targets per game, career best in fantasy points per game, 18.8. So it's just kind of unfortunate that you just have this black cloud surrounding your passing attack. Xavier Worthy has yet to evolve really beyond like a gimmicky secondary type of receiving threat in this offense. I'm not sure if he ever will. Like a shoulder separation in week 1 where he ran into Travis Kelce really derailed his season. Funny enough, that's exactly what happened with Kelce and Rashee Rice like the year prior. Kelce quietly taking out his own wide receivers to help get him some stats here to close out his career. Yeah, Worthy, man, I don't know. His downfield role like led to him having the lowest catchable target rate, 64% among all receivers with 70 plus targets. So like there's like he wants to be pigeonholed as like a downfield receiver, but he's not a great downfield wide receiver to be frank. So like I think there's just a lot of help this team needs in terms of getting a dependable pass catcher, pardon me, that they can bank on because they've got an inconsistent weapon in Worthy. They don't know what they have with Rice. Kelsey's likely out, and I think he's like a 99% chance he's retiring. So replacing that Kelsey slash Rice role as the chain mover is a huge need for Mahomes in the way he plays. And without a lot of cap space, maybe we see him go like the veteran route at the tight end position and get some guys that are trying to chase rings like Zach Ertz, Tyler Higbee. Maybe they get one of these guys on a 1 year deal and lets them just kick the can down the road where they don't have to spend a lot of money, but they still got a competent weapon for as long as like Ertz or Higbee would be healthy. But I don't know, man. This I think wide receiver or slot receiver or whatever you want to phrase that as, I think that's a huge need for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kelsey's done. I think I that's another position of need for this. Like this offense,
Yeah.
believe it or not, like this is considered one of the better teams and stuff like that. But this offense has a lot of holes. You mentioned the offensive line's a need here, running back is a need here, wide receiver could use help. Tight end, if you lose Kelsey, I mean you're losing
Big.
what a 20% target share. Someone who caught 76 passes last year has been a huge part of the offense. And yes, he was not the same guy that he was in years past last season, but he was still, a focal point. And you mentioned it, like Patrick Mahomes has been leaning on Kelsey for many years now, and I think he needs a tight end, a competent tight end there. So yeah, I see a lot of changes here in this team going into 2026. I think there are going to be a lot of offensive changes. But the problem is it might not be the biggest names because of their cap issues here. And I think you're going to see them address a lot of this here in the draft as well, right? So interested to see what happens here. I look for me, this is a team that there's so much uncertainty that it's very difficult to look at it from a fantasy standpoint at this time. You mentioned the Rice issues off the field. I agree with you. Worthy's just not the wide receiver that I think many people thought he would shape out to be. You don't know what's going to happen with Kelsey. We don't know what the hell's going to happen in this backfield. So it's just a very uncertain situation. I do think that this is a team that can compete, will compete so long as Mahomes and Reed are so long as Mahomes healthy and Reed is there. But I do think that when you look at the roster, they're probably third in the division as far as where I view them at, because I have Denver's roster ahead of them, and I have the Chargers roster ahead of them, and I think the Chargers are going to continue to build off of that. So right now, where the Chiefs stand, they have a lot of work to do here, Tyler. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, there's a lot of needs here. And we haven't even got to their biggest one, which to me is probably defensive tackle or edge, where Chris Jones getting up there in age. They've got Karlaftis. I think he's a pretty big hit, but they also spent a round one pick on Felix Zuma. Pretty quiet first three seasons. End of the season on IR. And Veach, their general manager Veach, noted that they needed a partner next to Jones that isn't like a low ceiling plug and play kind of guy. They need like a long term answer, like not a stopgap solution, basically. So I'm hoping to see them they invest something there, but that might not be until round two, which would be pick number 40 for them.
And there's also several key defenders in the secondary that are set to be free agency. Cook, Watson,
Yeah, their
like
depth.
yeah, like the depth here is going to be it's going to thin out, right? Like they're going to have to they're going to have to try to retain some of these guys if they're successfully great. But again, we're talking about a team that's losing several key players on both sides of the football and has cap issues. So very interested to see what happens between now and the NFL draft for this unit. But again, a team with a lot of needs here. Anything else for Kansas City you want to discuss that we haven't touched base on?
There's just so much need, like across the board, and for
Yeah,
them to have such little cap space, it's gonna be a really tough. They're put in a tough spot.
yeah, yeah. It's very difficult for me to stand here and say, man, I'm envisioning a straight bounce back year and them to dominate this division again. I wouldn't put my money on that. I'll never rule out Mahomes, but I'm not confident to put my money on that, right? Like that's kind of
Yeah,
where I'm at. And especially with that, you don't know what Mahomes is when he's going to return exactly, right? Like we just don't know.
yeah.
There's so much unknown with Kansas City. Probably one of the more unpredictable teams going into the 2026 season as things stand today. Again, we're recording on in March, so it's early in the year. All right, let's dive into the Las Vegas Raiders, the team with the number one overall pick in the NFL draft for the right reason, right? It was just abysmal season for this unit last year. Obviously they have many holes to fill here. There's new coaching changes here. Obviously, you mentioned it earlier. They got Clint Kubiak, who was hired. They got a new offensive coordinator in Andrew Janoko. And then they have a new defensive coordinator, Rob Leonard here. So lots of changes, lots of new faces here in the coaching staff. Um, Overall thoughts on this unit going into this season, obviously, going to the 2025 season, there was some excitement with Genty. I don't think he had a terrible season. I think expectations were pretty high, and I think he did the best given his circumstances. Like I feel like he did okay given his circumstances. He was often hit behind the line of scrimmage.
Hmm.
Didn't have much space to run. Overall, I think he had a good season. Bowers dealt with injuries, didn't have quite the season, that many were anticipating. I still think the future is bright there. They did lose Jacoby Myers. They traded him away to Jacksonville. I think that was a tough loss for this offense, but it was just a bad season. A team with a lot of holes, obviously. They have a lot of things that they need to plug here. But thoughts on their season in 2025, and then looking ahead, where do you view the Raiders here going into the 2026 season?
Brutal year. I mean, I think this, like, if you're looking at this roster, it could be the worst roster in the league right now, which is saying something. They finished the year 32nd in points per game, 32nd in EPA per play, 30th in success rate. Just across the board, just an ineffective offense. Passing 29th in EPA per dropback. They were 32nd in EPA per rush. It's just a gross group. So I think just scrapping everything that we tried to see from last year was a wise choice. Keep in mind they did bring in a new general manager in 2025, John Spytek. So we're just kind of seeing like the fruits of his labor kind of slowly unfold as he's got one draft class under him now. Now he's entering year two. We'll see what moves they make here in the offseason, but they've got quite a few free agents coming out that I think are players to move on from. So again, not like when I look at like a stat like them ranking like dead last in a lot of things and then moving on from those players that contributed to those stats, I don't think that's necessarily net negative, despite them starting over maybe with something else. Like it goes back to that Family Guy meme of what's in the mystery box, taking that over what they know is an unknown entity. Um, Geno Smith put a fork in him, man. He's done.
Yeah.
Led the league in interceptions and sacks. Quarterback 34 and e-paper play of 37 qualifying. I think there's a chance that he stays as a bridge quarterback. Releasing Geno does save $8 million, but this team enters with just shy of 90 million right now, second most in the league right now. We've got Mendoza locked in as the number one pick for the Raiders. I know a lot of teams are like in the mindset of letting these young guys foster on benches, get better. Um, I don't know. I think we've seen enough from Gino where I don't see any benefit to letting Mendoza watch that play as their starting quarterback. I forget where I heard it. I want to give credit, but Geno Smith, his name feels like a perfect addition to that long list of Browns failed quarterbacks on that jersey meme. I think that'd be a perfect addition. But yeah, I think we've got the Mendoza era begins. Hopefully, we've got sunnier skies here in the future. Um, but I will say Clint Kubiak, I think, was the great ad for them. Like I'm really excited about this. Him taking over as the head coach after coming from Seattle. I expect a return to the outside zone rushing game, something that the Raiders have tried to implement, but they've failed in recent years. Kubiak grandfathered into the scheme by his father, Gary Kubiak. Also, a lot more under center looks, a lot more heavy personnel sets, which is great for a team like the Raiders with their two tight ends they've got. Um, I think we can also expect explosives on both the run and the pass game with Kubiak. That's a staple of what we've seen the last 2 years in both Seattle and New Orleans. And they've got some explosive players to make plays down the field. We've got the offensive coordinator, Janoku, who has kind of tailed Kubiak these last few years as his quarterback coach. So excited to see what this duo can cook up with this brand new offense here. We got the quarterback issue, we got the offensive line issues, we've got I don't know, maybe wide receiver is an issue. We'll get on that in a moment, but let me pass the mic over to you. What are your thoughts on Mendoza as the guy that's going to lead them into the new era?
I'm excited, right? But I do think there's definitely going to be growing pains. And to me, if I'm the Raiders after drafting Mendoza, I'm going to focus a ton on offensive line. And I feel like that's what we talk about often. Like we just talked about it right now with the Chiefs. We
Hmm.
talked about it with Denver of adding youth to that. But when you're building around a quarterback, you obviously want to have weapons, and I think he's set with some pretty good key weapons. Like in my opinion, you got Bowers as a tight end. That's an elite weapon that you have as a quarterback. Genty out of the backfield, that's an elite weapon that you have as a quarterback. I think before you even address the wide receiver position, and like you said, we're going to talk about that in a minute. I think you beef up that offensive line, protect your investment, right? Protect Mendoza. But I definitely think there's going to be growing pains. I like his character. I think he's a very good quarterback. Is he going to transition and become an elite NFL quarterback? That remains to be seen. I think he has the work ethics. I think he has the skill set. And I think he has the mindset to become that. But it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, in my opinion, especially with the condition of this team, right? Like we kind of saw with Drake May, where his first season, it wasn't a great offense. It was they made changes, they added pieces, and things got better, right? So I can see a situation where there's a quick turnaround here with the Raiders. I just don't think it's going to be 2026. I don't think Geno Smith, I don't think they should retain Geno Smith. If you're going to have a bridge quarterback, I would go elsewhere. But like you mentioned, today's NFL, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing these young quarterbacks be thrown in there, right? Like, and they're going to go through roll with the punches, grow, and there's going to be some volatility. There's going to be some growing pains along the way, but a lot of these teams have been doing that, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I like the idea of sitting back and letting some of these quarterbacks learn. But today's NFL is much different than when it was in years past. Not everyone's going to have the luxury that Aaron Rodgers had. Now everyone's going to have the luxury that Jordan Love had of sitting back, and maybe that's a little bit too long for some of these quarterbacks. But I think if you sit back a year and you kind of watch and learn, and I think that's going to be beneficial for some of these guys. Again, I don't know what's going to happen here at the quarterback position. I think Geno Smith is out. If they do add someone, it'd be interesting to see who they add. There's obviously some veteran quarterbacks out there that might be interested. Russell Wilson's in the name that could be in the mix here as a bridge quarterback. He's another one that I don't care to add if I'm the Raiders. But again, you just don't know what their intention is with Mendoza. I don't think that they're going to be able to sit back and sit him all year. The number one overall pick, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that at worst case scenario, midseason, he's under center for them. I think it'll be sooner than that, potentially week one here. So that's what I see happening. I'm interested to see what they do, after they draft Mendoza. I'm interested to see what they do there. I'm also interested to see what they do in free agency. Do they make a big splash? Like, do they put, do they start going all in right away? It's going to be interesting to see. I agree with what you said. You said something that to me makes sense. Like, if it wasn't working, right? Even with some of these names that are going to go out, there's some defensive guys that I think are big names. They're out walking out the door. You know what? It's a fresh start, restart everything, reboot, that whatever you want to call it. Do that here in Las Vegas, and I do think in a couple years, based on some of the pieces I already have here, I think this is a team that can compete here, especially if Mendoza pans out, Tyler. So I am interested to see how this all shapes out. When you look at team needs, you mentioned there's a ton here. We'll start at running back. So Ashton Genty's your guy. And look, dude, you look at the numbers here, and 975 rushing yards, 266 attempts, 3.7 yards per carry. That's not on him. All right, I'm telling you right now, that's not on him. I liked what I saw. Kind of it took some time for him to get going in the passing game, but then he got going in the passing game. 55 receptions here. He had over 1,200 yards from scrimmage. He had a total of 10 touchdowns. Um, Look, man, I think I view him, and I know that it's going to take time to completely rehaul this offensive line and rebuild it. But even with that in mind, I'm going to view him as a top 10 running back going into the season. All right, I'm viewing 300 plus opportunities. I think they're going to have to respect the passing game a little bit more with Mendoza under center. I think that they're going to, add some pieces here on the offensive line. I think they are going to, there's going to be a new look to this offensive line. And then you look at Mostert, not that he was going to be a threat by any means, but there's a couple of running backs here, free agency. They are going to add someone to back him up, but I don't think there's going to be anyone that's going to impact his role, his usage. What do you think for year two of Genty? And then kind of where do you stand on him and the rest of this backfield?
Yeah, very tough first year for him running down an offensive line that was poorly coached and frankly had a DGAF attitude. They just were between Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll's son coaching the OL. It was just a disaster. So I'm really excited to see what Kubiak and that scheme can do. With a lot of money, I'm excited to see what kind of free agents they're able to bring in. Um, But yeah, this was just an offensive line that was set up to fail. So there were 49 backs with 100 plus carries. What's his name? Ashton Jeanty had the second lowest yards before contact per attempt. That's a stat reflective more of the offensive line than the running back. He just didn't have room to operate. He was 15th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 17th in yards after contact per attempt. Those are two great stats. Now, if we can get some offensive line providing some yards before contact, we'll see the success rate. We'll see the explosive runs. All those will come with it. I do think we saw what we needed in terms of him as a pass catching back, fantastic in that element. But yeah, we saw Kubiak's scheme basically help turn Seattle's offensive line around overnight, where they invested in some guys with some key capital. But the scheme, I think, was really the big changer in terms of what they were able to do in such short little time. So I'm hoping that Las Vegas is able to do something similar. They need bullies. That's
Yeah.
basically what they need. They need bullies on along the offensive line. Left guard, Dylan Parham's a free agent. Center I'm sorry, Jackson Powers Johnson is. I frankly don't think he's a good center. I think he'd probably be better moved toward guard. Um, I think that might make sense in terms of a guy that bringing a veteran center to help a rookie quarterback in terms of like checks and calls and protections. I think that would be a wise move by this organization. Um, right tackle DJ Glaze, modest results. He's just fine. Like I think there are three starting offensive lineman spots that I think they could at least try to consider elevating, if not four. Um, yeah, that's where I am with this group. That would help both the run and the pass game so much.
And there's several like good centers in hitting the free agent market. Like this offseason. Like there's several good centers hitting the free agent market. So I agree. Do you think they retain Parham? Do you think
I
that's a
don't know.
priority for them? Because
No,
I don't think he's panned out like for them, right? Like he's been okay, but he hasn't. I don't think he's done anything, and I think his market value is going to be pretty significant. Um, I don't think they retain him.
I don't think there's a need to.
Yeah, I
I'd
don't.
move on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm interested to see, man, because I do think that there's some good offensive linemen hitting the free agency and this you met. I think one thing I didn't mention that you mentioned that they have money. They have money to spend. Um, so yeah, I'm interested to see how that shapes out because I think that's going to be huge for Genti. With this new system and this new scheme that we're going to see here, Kubiak's system has always been very, very friendly for running backs. Like especially
Mhm.
this skill sets that Genti has, I think he's going to flourish in this new system and scheme here going into 2026. Um, you mentioned we'll leave receiver for end. Obviously, tight end, they have two guys here, Brock Bowers, Mayer. Um, no, they're not going to address the tight end position. Like they're good, right? Like we're good. We're not making any changes here. Is Brock Bowers your tight end one going into the 2026 season, or is he your tight end two?
I'm very curious to see what Arizona does at quarterback because McBride's value was really stemmed by Jacoby Brissett just throwing the piss out of the ball week in and week out.
Yes,
So I'm kind of waiting to see. Let me put a timeout on that one. We'll figure out who the Arizona quarterback is first because I think that's really going to drive McBride's value.
I will say this. It happens often. Young quarterbacks lean on the tight end often early in their career. Mendoza has one of the best tight ends in football to lean on,
Oh
dude.
yeah.
I expect Bowers to get a healthy Bowers is going to see an abundance of targets in 2026, I think. I don't think you could
That
go wrong with either.
That's a great point too, the healthy Bowers, because he started the season with a knee injury and he
Yeah.
just kind of played through it. Uh, Him playing through it just kind of made his numbers all kind of like take a step backwards and lower. But I mean, they just took so long to put him on IR. It was very frustrating.
Yes.
I will note they did not have surgery. Bowers did not have off-season surgery for any kind of injuries for his knee. So we're just going the long rehab route, so which is fine. Each player's doing their own thing with that. But I'm curious to see if a healthy Bowers returns back to that rookie campaign version where we just saw him take the league by storm.
I think so, dude. I am so looking forward to it. I haven't done any drafts yet. I'm assuming he's still going pretty high in fantasy drafts. Have you been doing any drafts or not? Not
I'm
yet.
waiting. I'm
Yeah,
waiting.
I'm doing the same.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he's someone that I think will be in for a bounce back season. When you look at this receiving group, I think you need help here. I know you got some young guys, but where do you stand with this receiving group? You got Tucker, Beck. Like, where are you at with this group? And do you see them adding someone?
It's an interesting group when you look at it like on a per piece kind of lens. You've got your I think Dante Thornton has the physical traits to be a typical X. Like you don't see 6'5" guys with 210 pounds, 4.3 speed, I believe he has. He is just unreal. He's Calvin Johnson with more gas, basically. Jack Besh is kind of that tweener of playing the big slot role, which I liked in today's NFL. And then you've got Trey Tucker, who's like your typical field stretching guy, who's got a lot of juice as well. Um, I think the pushback you could say is they're all just kind of developmental players and nobody's really the sure thing. Like if you're trying to mirror what the Raiders have with what Seattle had last year and what Kubiak's going to bring over, maybe Bowers is the more likely candidate to be the JSN replacement in terms of the guy getting fed targets over any of these wide receivers. I was just astonished how little playing time a guy like Dante Thornton got last year. Jack Besh even got like the slow rolled. And then I think back, wait, this was a terrible coaching staff. Maybe we shouldn't put what they shouldn't put too much stock in what this coaching staff did last year. So I'm kind of giving like a reroll. We're just gonna kind of, I don't know, write off the 2025 season, give it like the asterisk, like what we did with the what's his name? The Urban Meyer season with Jacksonville, where
Yes.
we're just like,
Yeah.
okay, there's an
Yes.
asterisk here. We all know it just didn't really count. Um, so I'm kind of excited to see what these players have because on paper they kind of fit like the roles that you typically make in terms of like trying to design an offense, but doesn't mean they don't go out and get some extra players. We do have Tyler Lockett as a free agent. He was kind of a fun little addition late in the year, but that was more the Pete Carroll tie than anything. I don't know. I don't know if they make a move or not, but they have the money to do so. Maybe they get a veteran. Maybe that's the path they go.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe a veteran to kind of, add a someone with experience here to this young offense. Shaheed is someone that I had in mind. He's not going to fix anything, but he's some of that maybe. Rashid Shaheed,
Yeah, maybe.
um, that gives another explosive dynamic to this offense. But I think a veteran. The problem is like Mike Evans, I just don't see him going there because I don't think that's where he wants to end his career, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, if he wants to follow the money, I think Evans is going to go to a team that's competing and has a chance to make a run, versus a team like the Raiders that has they're not close right now. But I do think someone like a Mike Evans would be a great addition here because it would add some experience to this locker room. And then just a reliable piece for a young quarterback. So I'm very interested to see what they do here, but they have so much money. They could really do whatever they want. They can offer whatever they want. It's just a matter of who signs with them and who does not. Um, we talked
yeah.
about the offensive line. Anything else on the offense before we dive into the defense? Anything else on the offense you want to add?
No, just that I do think the veteran path is the way they go. Like maybe we get Romeo Dobbs. Like he's kind of a secure outside boundary
Yes.
target. That could make sense. Um, I'm curious what we've got left in the tank with Christian Kirk, who kind of flashed at various points with Houston. Injuries have kind of just kind of derailed the end of his seasons, like for what, 3 or 4 straight years it feels. But he was also another name that kind of piqued my interest because he can play both inside and outside. And then maybe they get involved in the Alec Pierce bidding wars. I don't know what's going to happen with Pierce, but I think he'll get a contract that kind of exceeds the value that many are anticipating. We could be looking at 30 million plus per year for him.
I mean that would be fun. I
That
would
would be fun.
prefer Pierce elsewhere, but that would be fun.
Same. Same.
Um, yeah, I think he's maybe I don't know if they'll go for a Wando Robinson either, but that's another like just give him the ball and 5-6 yards and just dink and dunk with him. Um, we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see what happens. But I definitely think that they could add a piece there wide receiver. Defense, bro, I think they have to focus on that defensive line. Continue to focus on that defensive line. Um, they can use linebackers here as well. What do you see them doing here as far as defense? Any key piece here that you think that they should retain? Um, I know they have Kuntz going out. They have Stokes. Any of these guys they should be retaining here?
Um, yeah, I'm with you in terms of like positional needs. I wrote down edge and defensive tackle as the top two for defense, and then linebacker also. That's been just a revolving door at linebacker. They need a long-term solution. Um, but yeah, I'd like to see them hit the trenches there. Who knows what's going to happen with this Max Crosby contract, which is going to instantly change their cap space. Should they give him a NFL record-breaking contract like he's likely to earn? But at this time, it's just very unclear. We don't know what's going on with him in his long-term contract. So until they figure that out, it's just kind of he's the first domino before the rest, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right, ready to move on to the Chargers here. I think this is the most
Yeah.
exciting, and we said this at the beginning. This is the most exciting team for me in this division and in the AFC, really, and one of the most exciting teams in the NFL going into 2026. The Chargers, I think the big note, obviously, here, adding Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, like this is going to change the entire dynamic of this offense. Like it is going to be a very new look here. So I'm excited to see Justin Herbert. There was always the rumblings of, oh, what they would have drafted, Miami would have drafted Justin Herbert. How would he have? We're going to find out right away how he would have panned out in Miami, with McDaniel running, calling the plays there in Los Angeles. Um, that's the big. I mean, that's their big addition there. They added him. Obviously, they have a new defense coordinator in Chris O'Leary there this season. And then you look at some of the free agency here. I mean, I think some of the big names are Khalil Mack on defense. You have I think Keelan Allen. Yes, he is obviously a veteran, but he's always been a part of this offense. And yes, he took a step back, but at moments he was reliable for them last year. He had some moments last season. There's a lot, and then I think the biggest thing here is offensive line. Like for me, they've had issues protecting Justin Herbert, and it was a big issue last season. This offensive line between injuries and just not playing to their ability there. I think that's a big need. I think it's going to be a big focus this offseason for this team. But overall thoughts, 2025 season. Then looking ahead, like the Chargers, is this a team that you're looking, to be? And you just met. I mean, I know the answer, but is this a team you're looking to be competing at a very high level in 2026?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see this team. I'm very optimistic too. So like last year, I placed a few futures in February to win the Super Bowl, and the Chargers were the first team that I thought of for this exercise. Unfortunately, they were like 13 to 1 or 14 to 1. They've since cooled off. I guess I wasn't the only one that thought that. They are now 16 to 1 on DK. I just pulled it up as we were talking. But I don't know if I want to put my money in for a full calendar year for a 16 to 1 bet. I like to do them for much longer long shots in terms of those type of plays. I digress. I think this Chargers team is going to be a very fun one to invest in for this upcoming year. I love the Mike McDaniel pairing with Jim Harbaugh. This Dolphins team for McDaniel was super run heavy last year, and we know Harbaugh is not afraid to get back to that and lean on the run. They've got so much cap space, 87 million, third most. I think they're going to bolster the interior of that offensive line. We got both tackles coming back, and to answer the first part of your question, which is what I thought of them last year, it just really kind of got derailed after the injuries to the offensive tackles. And then we saw the defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter. I thought he performed better than the pieces he had. So it was like kind of like a sum of the parts kind of thing where collectively they did great in terms of limiting opposing offenses. They were a bend, not break defense that forced long, methodic drives down the field. Um, and whenever you have that type of defense, most often than not, it's tough for offenses to sustain 9 play drives, 10 play drives and end with it punching into the end zone for a score. So I think his loss is actually pretty notable. Um, Curious to see how they go about some of the pieces there on defensively, but we'll start with the offense. Justin Herbert, I mean, he's kind of a fun vote too for MVP if you just kind of want to say like, okay, let's just assume this team takes a leap forward. They win the AFC West, which I mean, I think it's very viable. I mean, Herbert has always been one of my favorite quarterbacks since entering the league. Like he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's put up some massive passing campaigns, 5,000 passing yards, but he's really just kind of pivoted to a run first offense by design in terms of what his coordinators have called, which have kind of capped him from going nuclear. Last year we got to see the training wheels taken off with the rushing element, where he ran for a career high 498 rushing yards. That might not sound like a ton, 498, but it was the second most among all quarterbacks. Only Josh Allen had more last year. So I think with Herbert rushing a lot more, we've got the ability for him to tap into that fantasy ceiling that we like to see. Quarterback 10 last year and 18.9 fantasy points per game. I wouldn't be shocked if he threatened to get 20 plus. Should we get a full healthy offensive line? And with all these weapons he's got, running back, wide receiver, tight end, pretty deep here across the board. So I'm pretty optimistic.
As am I. As am I. I'm going to be very bullish on this offense here. You mentioned Justin Herbert. He's been one of my favorite quarterbacks since entering the NFL as well. I think he's had, obviously his ups and downs, but he's flashed that he can be an elite quarterback, in the NFL, and I think he has that potential. He's someone that, has had multiple coordinators as well. Like that impacts the quarterbacks. Like we've seen it throughout the NFL. Like we've seen it
Yeah.
throughout the years, right? Where changes. I think this is probably the perfect coordinator for Herbert, his skill sets. He does have that sneaky rushing upside, in my opinion. I mean, his first season in the NFL, he had 5 rushing touchdowns, right? Like 2020, he had 5 rushing touchdowns. He's had 3 seasons with over 300 rushing yards throughout his career. So, like, he is someone that has little sneaky wheels here. He's finished as a top, 12 quarterback in all but one season from a fantasy standpoint here. The only year he didn't do it, it was when he played 13 games, right? Like that was the only season he was not a top 12 quarterback. He played 13 games that season. That was in 2023. So I'm a big fan of his. I'm looking forward to seeing him in this system, in this offense. Um, I think Omar and Hampton could have a monster season. Like, I mean, monster season here. Kamani Vidal is said to be a free agent here. Not, and I mentioned this because Vidal was, had a role. Like, and I know Hampton, but Vidal had a role here in this offense that. So I think Hampton's going to be in for an abundance of opportunities. I think he's going to be their featured back. I don't think you're going to see a committee by any means. Yeah, will they have some change of pace guys? Yeah, will they, mix things up in the backfield? I think so. But I also think, like we saw with HN in Miami, like they're not going to be afraid to lean on him. I think Hampton's going to see more involvement in the passing game, something that I think was somewhat lacking last year, right? Where like maybe we wanted a little bit more of Hampton in the passing game. I think that's going to be here as well. 300 plus opportunities, in my opinion, in order for Hampton. I'm viewing as a top 10 back, I think, going into the season. Thoughts on him? Obviously, rookie season, dealt with injuries, and whatnot. But where are you at with him going into this upcoming season, Tyler?
Yeah, very bullish on him. Again, it's ma mainly because I think the return of both these offensive tackles, which these were two really, really good offensive tackles, needs to make sure that's very clear. I think them coming back is massive for them, but I think we will see a new set of the interior of the offensive line where left guard, center, right guard, like left guard Zion Johnson's a free agent. He could be out on the move. Center Bradley Bozeman retired. Right guard Mekhi Becton didn't really fit in with this unit last year. He kind of had a down season. So I'm curious to see if he's possibly cut. They could save $10 million if they cut him. So if they just retool the interior of that offensive line, I'd be very excited for what they can do in terms of rush production because this was a group that ranked just 27th in yards before contact per attempt when they had so many people just rotating in and out, in and out. Getting some stability along the interior, I think, is also important. Um, but yeah, I mean, everything about Hampton was elite. I'll also note it's not just Vidal that's a free agent. Najee Harris, Hassan
Yes.
Haskins, Jarrett Patterson. It's a blank room, basically. So it's him and whoever else they decide to bring in. I'm very eager to see who they do because, like you said, he'll have the bell cow work, but he won't have it entirely to himself. But he was just so productive last year. Top 12 fantasy score that opening month, 16.0 fantasy points per game. Then he had that week 5 high ankle sprain, ended up costing him 8 games. But I mean, even working behind an injured, ineffective line last year, it was very evident he's still got a lot of tools and traits that make him very, very special. Um, yeah, I envision him going early round 2 of drafts right now. So I'll be grabbing him at that 1-2 turn. I think he's a fantastic pick for you to go running back, or wide receiver running back and get yourself a guy that has top 10 upside. But yeah, I think they'll add somebody, just not sure if it's somebody of note. I think that's the best way to phrase it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I even it like I don't think it's going to be anyone that's going to cut into his workload too much. I don't think they're going to invest high dollar on at the running back position having Hampton. So I agree with you 100% there. When you look at the wide receiver position, McConkey took a step back, right? I think it's fair to say he took a step back.
Yeah.
He had a 21% target share, 107 targets. Quentin Johnson took a little step forward, 90% target share there for him. Obviously, still erratic, very volatile production, but did have some big moments throughout the season. So I think it was a win for him. Keenan Allen, 122 targets. He led the team in targets last season, 22% target share. This is why I say, he wasn't the Keenan Allen of old, right, by any means, but he was still very much involved in, him hitting free agency. Obviously is a big thing for them. They lose their the highest targeted guy on their offense, really. This is a team that I think could add a good receiver here. I am so interested to see if they ride it out with McConkey and Johnston, if they don't bring back Allen, or what they do here really at the wide receiver position. But give me your thoughts on this receiving group and then what you envision here in 2026.
I hated this unit last year because it was so spread out. It was like Bills light, where like at best we get like the Shakir 20% target share. Uh, these guys were just 18% kind of, and it was just immensely frustrating on a week to week level. We saw some good weeks from Keenan Allen to begin the year. We saw some sporadic touchdown boosted weeks from Quentin Johnston. McConkey cleared 15 plus fantasy points, I think, just three times all season. So it was, and then we got the Rondo Gadsden midseason breakout. Like it was just a constant rotation of who was going to get the volume, which made it an immense headache for fantasy football purposes. McConkey made a big step backward, like across the board. Yards per out run dropped from 2.57 to 147. His receiving yards per game dropped from 72 to 49. And there was some quarterback play behind a poor offensive line, like that certainly was a contributing factor. His catchable target rate went from 87% down to 73%, despite having basically the same ADOT. He went from wide receiver 5 in catchable target rate down to wide receiver 41 for some context there. I'm really just hopeful this team moves on from Keenan Allen with that expiring contract. Last year, he got the record for franchise most receptions. He's 525 or 535 yards away from getting the most receiving yards in franchise history. So I do think there's a possibility that he does stick around. He was recently quoted in February saying that he's not done. So I'm sighing with frustration
Oh
because
boy.
him out of the way would help McConkey get back to his top 24 status. Um, but yeah, I mean, with I'm expecting Allen to be here in this offense, which stinks because it's also going to delay any kind of snaps and volume for Trey Harris, a guy they spent round two capital on last year. Johnston basically was the same guy of last year, so 2024 versus 2025, where he was that downfield guy that was getting some 50-50 balls in the red zone, 12.9 yards per reception in 2024, 14.4 yards per reception in 2025. The catch rate 60.4 and 60.7, very similar, but a high drop rate, a very weak contested catch profile. I mean, and these are the things that I view as that are hindrances for him ever really truly breaking out. And the general manager Ortiz said that they are going to take their time deciding if Quentin Johnson merits that fifth-year option. So I don't think they're super bullish on him long term. Throwing the fact they invested in Harris, another similarly built wide receiver that they would like to get on the outside. Maybe his time is ending in Los Angeles as well. So I think we're going to be back for a season of frustration. And then you throw in the fact that we've got Mike McDaniel, which might make them run a bit more. A healthy O'Marion Hampton all season long. Remember, he missed 8 games. Perhaps we see him run a bit more. Like all these things, a healthy offensive line, all these things could point toward more rushing. Where I'm probably going to be a bit more bearish on the individual pieces and just focus my fantasy attention on the heavy hitters, Herbert and O'Marion Hampton.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be a very messy situation, right? Like in 2026, I think that well, if you look at back at last year, and obviously there's changes of schemes, changes of system, but there was three receivers, all right, in Los Angeles that each averaged at least 6 targets. Like I could see them spreading the ball given the supporting cast here, right? Like it's not like in Miami where they had Tyreek Hill, right? And you had Jalen Wall. Like now you just have several guys. I do think Trey Harris could take a step forward here, depending on what happens with Allen here. But I do think Trey Harris could be that one player in this group that takes a step forward and maybe even overlaps Johnston, right? Like especially if they're non-committal to him for that fifth year option, the writing is on the wall at that point, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's when we could see Harris take a step forward. He might be a late round flyer that I would take in best ball because I do think he can have some pretty big moments in this offense. You mentioned Gadsden. He had a good second half of the season there. He played in 62% of the offensive snaps, 14% target share, average 4.6 targets per game. We've seen how Mike McDaniel uses his tight ends. And I think Gadsden's in for a solidified role here. It's a matter of is he going to continue to improve his pass blocking or not, right? And I think that that's the big thing. You need to be able to pass block here under this McDaniel system. But what are your thoughts on Gadsden going into the 2026 season? I think he was pretty impressive. I think he has his skill sets to flourish in this offense and to be a big part of what they do. It's just a matter of is he going to be playing 60 to 70% of the snaps or higher, or is he going to be in that 50% mark because of his pass blocking, skills? So that's the
Mhm.
big thing with Gatson for me. But I think if he's on that field for 60 to 70% of the offense snaps, I think he'll carve it out consistent role. In fact, I think it'll be more consistent than the wide receivers on a week to week basis.
Yeah, I think it's a very possible outcome. He had a 9.8 average depth of target, which is right in line with the wide receivers, where he's not like the short 5 or 6 yard A dot. He's down there. He's down the field. Weeks 6 through 18. So week 6, we saw the breakout performance for Gadsden. He burst onto the scene that week. 9.7 fantasy points per game over that span. I mean, that's like back end tight end one fantasy production. So like, I view him as the guy that can pick up some quality chunk gains and be that guy that kind of overcomes those volume concerns I just mentioned a little bit ago. I like him as like a high upside tight end two, a fringe tight end one for like a typical redraft format. So I will be targeting him in Chargers stacks for best ball, but I don't know if I would go his path in a redraft start sit format because he's kind of on that border of like, yeah, kind of dime a dozen kind of group. Do you have any strong thoughts on him in like a redraft lens, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's going to depend on what they do. Like for
Okay.
me, it's going to depend on what they do. I think he had a good grade. Like he had an above average grade in pass blocking last year. It was I think it was 70 point something or 71 point something. I could pull it up, but he did have an above average PFF grade for pass blocking. So if he's on the field for 65-70% of the offensive snaps, I do think he could carve out a 18 to 20% target share. If that's yielding 5 to 7 targets per week, I do think he could be an impactful week to week contributor. And I think the floor would be pretty high. And I don't think we saw anywhere near his ceiling. He flashed some moments last year, like you mentioned, like he has some pretty big moments. And what stood to me is even when he struggled, the team kept giving him opportunities, right? And I think that speaks volumes of where the coaching staff, stands with him. And yes, there's some changes. There's a new coordinator, but Harbaugh, I think, is pretty clear that he likes this young man. So I think he's going to have opportunities. But for me, it's going to really depend on what they do with the rest of the offense. If they add a key piece to the wide receiving group, then I think that's going to impact his role. If they don't, if they kind of keep this group at intact and really don't make any significant additions, I do think Gadsden's going to have a pretty good role here. So I'm pulling it up here. Yeah, so he had a 71.2 pass blocking grade for the season. That's pretty above average here. When you look at it. So I think he's going to be just fine, man. Maybe not a
Yep.
top 10 guy, maybe not maybe he'll be in that fringe, 12 to 15 range for me.
Mhm.
Um, but it's really going to be depending on what they do here, for sure.
I don't know if they would add anybody. Like I think they like the developmental pieces they've gotten, like Darius Davis, Keandre Lambert-Smith looked pretty good from time to time, rookie from last year. The only guy they're really losing is Tyler Conklin. So I mean they've got Will Dissly. He was brought in on a decent contract, so I think they're kind of gonna stay put. Keenan Allen's probably their biggest question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, well that is the biggest question mark. If they lose Keenan Allen, I think Gadsden becomes a security blanket. Like I really
Yeah.
do. Like
Yeah.
that's a 22% target share up for grabs. He averaged it was what seven targets, 7.2 targets per game is what he averaged
Mhm.
over the course of the season. if if you lose that, that's not all going to go to Gatson, but I could see at least 50% of that, 40 to 50% of that going to Gatson. Like I do think he becomes a security blanket where you have McConkey, Gatson operating as those, down the guys that are threatening that, closer to the quarterback, and you have Harris, Quinton Johnson stretching the field. Like that's how I envision that playing out here in 2026. So I guess adding would be the focal point. And I also think that we're going to see Hampton more involved in the passing game as well than we saw him last year. What Hampton averaged, what 2.5, no, wait, 3.9 targets per game. I could see that number increase significantly as well there as a check down option in this offense. Um, so we talked about the offensive line. We talked about the receivers. You said that we're going to switch gears to defense. I know you said that there's some key pieces here. I think obviously Khalil Mack being one of the biggest names here. I think they retain him. I think they bring him back. Um, Talk to me about the defense. Free agents here that you think they should bring back, and what you see, holes in the defense that you see here.
Yeah, midseason they traded for Odafe Owe from
Yes.
Baltimore, sending away Alohi Gilman. I think that was such a win-win trade where both defenses benefited from each one. Owe was that guy that just had that nonstop motor that kind of cleaned up sacks where he would just continue to chase the quarterback around 3 seconds into the play, 4 seconds into the play, finally getting to him. Mac, 35 years old, kind of like a feast or famine rusher right now, where he's like preying on the terrible offensive tackles, not performing super great against quality ones. Maybe they do bring him back for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. But yeah, locking up Owe, like so he and Gilman were both on the final year of their rookie contracts. So I would think both teams, the Chargers and the Ravens, want to lock up both one respectively with a long-term contract. Owe was just fantastic in my eyes. Um, those are like the big guys that I think they really need to lock up because they've got some other expiring contracts. Tony Jefferson, a starting safety for them, started 8 games for them. Benjamin St-Juste, kind of retread from Washington. They can let him walk. I don't think he's long for the league. But yeah, that's really it. Just those two guys, Mac and Owe. I think this team just really needs to invest in their defensive line, whether it be edge or defensive tackle. Letting Poona Ford go the year prior, I think it's something that still bites them. Poona Ford, just a fantastic run defender, top 5 in PFF grade, back-to-back seasons. Um, so edge, defensive line, and then safety with Tony Jefferson on an expiring contract, Derwin James turning 30 this offseason. An eye to the future, I think, would be wise there. But that's what I'm looking at for this squad.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think always the guy that they need to prioritize. Like, I think he and Mac are two guys they should bring back. I think you could get Mac, like you mentioned, 35 years old. You could get him on a cheaper contract. I
One
think
year
that.
deal?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
1 year
And
deal.
you say, look, we're going to run it back. You give him a nice 1 year deal. I think he'll do it. I think he'll do it. You have him. And oh wait, I mean, you got strong edges there. I agree. Defensive line, secondary as well. You can always add. You could beef up the safeties there. Jefferson's going to be, I think he's 33 or 32 or something like that. So he's also up there in age. Get some youth there. But trenches, right? Like again, continue to
Yeah.
beef up that offensive line. Like we're going to say this in every podcast because that's where it's important. But beef up that offensive line. I think that's a huge need for this team. Continue to protect your investment in Justin Herbert. But this is the team I'm most excited for in this division, and one of the most like teams I'm excited for this season. I
Mhm.
am very interested to see what happens here. But I'm definitely gonna be placing some futures here for the Chargers, some of their players, and I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it, Tyler. Anything else before we jump off here, bro?
No, this is a fun division to talk about. There's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of cap space as well, so we could see some heavy hitters here once free agency opens. Yeah, I'm already excited. We're starting to see some news trickle in coming out of this NFL Combine of some transactions already unfolding. So we'll cover those with each division as we get to those specific teams. But I am very excited for this AFC West. Should be a fun unit as we get ready for the 2026 season.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped. I think this is one of those old divisions that it's going to be interesting to watch. A lot of changes, a lot of moving parts. So definitely a fun one. Tyler, why don't you let everyone know what you got cooking, what you got coming up, where they can find you and they can find all your work, man.
Sure, you can catch all my content over at fantasyguru.com, on Twitter at Tyler Beaker, Buecher. Yeah, working on just these offseason, basically transactions in terms of what's happening, recapping the season that unfolded, looking at team needs, draft needs, free agency needs, um, working on some larger projects to it that I'm kind of keeping close to the vest. And then the rookies, diving into the wide receiver position right now. So getting really excited for this upcoming draft. Can't wait for this year's group.
Yeah, man, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like that's really what it is. We got a lot of behind the scenes stuff going over there at fantasyguru.com. Excited to see some of these coming to fruition in the upcoming months. Always check out Tyler Beaker's work, man. It's great stuff. I always say it. One of the best ball products out there that he puts out there. Great stuff. And you just into everything, the analytics, all that stuff. So make sure you're checking out all of his work there at fantasyguru.com. He's also in Discord, like you mentioned. So any questions, go ask the guy, Tyler Beaker. Anything you want football, he got you. And anything you want, anything. He's always answering questions there. You could get all of my work as well at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram threads and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. You can also watch this YouTube over or this podcast over there on YouTube at the Mind of Marsal channel. So make sure you're checking that out. For the great Tyler Beaker, I am Armando Marsal. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the Mind of Marsal. Until next time.